Awesome. All right, next question is what's something you learned in pro ball that most youth college players have no idea about?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I was thinking a lot about, and I heard a player, and this constantly comes up with me is like I always think about like strategic sacrifice, and Ryan Bannister's like a guy who talks a ton about that, and I love listening to him. He's a White Sox director of pitching, but he'll always talk about strategic sacrifice and ball flight. But I'll think about strategic sacrifice even in the setting of like biomechanics, health, etc. Um, what can you do versus like what is the risk with it, right? So I always want to like take that in like a calculated sense. Like I write return to throw programs based on ACR, which is acute divided by chronic workload. So I want to know what I can do in a like mathematical sense to keep a pitcher predictably healthy, right? We've dealt with one real injury on our staff this year after we had a group of guys who were not healthy last year and didn't have their best arm. So my biggest strategic sacrifice, if there's a if we have 25 pitchers in D1, you have I think it's a 34 man roster cap. Now we don't have that, but again, we have about 25 pitchers. If we have 3 weekend starters, and we believe you have to have like 12 guys a weekend who have to be who are like your 12 guys that are ready to go for that weekend, more or less. If you're throwing 15 guys a weekend, it's going to be a struggle. Um, is improving them as a player and advancing their development more important, or is having them, like their existence, their ability to throw a pitch on the mound? What is more important? And it is their presence that's more important as a college baseball coach. Now, how much can you develop a guy? How much can you take a guy's ball flight and move it a certain way? I actually heard a player recently talk about his coach changing his arm angle and then him having an elbow injury. And like my biggest thought with that is, okay, you dropped this guy down, but you didn't train his planar rotation because your arm angle's always going to be in line with your planar rotation or your trunk angle, your contralateral tilt. And I think those are the shortcomings with people is like we always want to make changes with people, but we don't want to spend the time of what that change looks like. So I think strategic sacrifice goes along with that. It goes along with how much time you're gonna spend on this if you are gonna make a change. Like in general, are you gonna make the change with it potentially eliciting worse ball flight, less velo, and worse things worse is injury. So yeah, I've looked at keeping guys on the field as like the most important thing. I've looked at development as the second piece, and obviously, having been a player development coach, I think my MO and why you come to pitch at Ecker College right now is to get pitching development, to be honest, and so I think that might be kind of confusing people hearing that from me, but it is the truth, and um, but then you have organizations like you have the Dodgers who their strategic sacrifice is a lot lower than I'm right down the street from the Trop here, so I'll say the Rays, but when you deal with a budget of that feels endless, like you can teach a guy to throw 100 overnight, and like if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. We just go to the next guy, and like your arms in AAA are still a big league pitching staff. So not everyone has that ability. So until you do, like you really got to make the most of what you have with what's in front of you.